Ever get that feeling like you're kind of tiptoeing around the subject of learning disabilities?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, it's such an important thing to talk about.
Right. But it can be tricky.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're gonna look at this guide all about how to have those conversations, the ones about learning disabilities.
I think it's a really valuable resource, honestly.
Me too. It's about, how to approach the topic with confidence, with
And then
sensitivity.
in a way that's, like, actually helpful to everyone involved.
Exactly. So if you're ready to learn a thing or two about how to talk about learning disabilities in a way that's informed, sensitive, and empowering, well, you've come to the right place.
You got it.
One of the things that really struck me in this guide was how it emphasized the term learning disability. Instead of using learning difficulty.
Oh, that's a really good point. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference.
It does. Because it's really about someone's ability to learn, not, not their intelligence.
You're so right. It's about recognizing that intelligence comes in many forms.
And that everyone has their own way of learning.
Exactly. And using that language, learning disability instead of difficulty, can really help combat those harmful stereotypes we see out there.
Absolutely. It's like saying, hey, everyone learns differently,
Instead of implying that someone's somehow less than.
Right. And this guide goes on to dive into specific learning differences, like common ones like dyslexia.
Dyscalculia, ADHD.
Yeah, all those. And it's interesting because they all kind of impact different ways of processing information, right?
Absolutely. Whether it's, reading like with dyslexia or numbers with dyscalculia or even just focusing, like with ADHD.
Yeah. And I think one of the key takeaways from this guide is that, understanding how someone learns differently, like really getting that.
That's the first step.
It is. It's the first step to supporting them effectively. Okay, so let's say we've got a decent handle on the vocabulary now. The question then becomes, how do we actually talk about these things?
In a way that's helpful.
Yeah, helpful and not hurtful.
That's the key. And I think the guide does a really good job of providing us with some really great phrases.
Oh, it does. Like, for example.
Well, like focusing on someone's strengths, instead of just focusing on their challenges.
Right.
So instead of saying he's struggling with reading, you could say something like he's a fantastic visual learner and we're exploring tools like audiobooks to support him.
I like that. It's just a much more positive way to frame it.
And it's empowering.
It is. But
Yeah.
what about, those times when you need to be a bit more direct?
Yeah.
Like when you're explaining to a teacher why a student might need extra support.
Right. And in those cases, the guide encourages us to use clear factual language.
Okay. So, for instance.
You might say something like, she has trouble processing information quickly, so breaking down tasks into smaller chunks would be really helpful.
Right. And it's not about, it's not about labeling the person or judging them. It's about understanding.
And addressing.
And addressing the learning difference.
Exactly. And, this kind of understanding, this awareness, it's crucial when it comes to things like IEPs.
IEPs.
Yeah.
Individualized education programs. Those are legally binding documents, right?
They are.
So they have some serious weight behind them.
Absolutely. An IEP, it basically outlines a student's specific needs and then lays out a plan for support, a tailored plan.
And they can include things like accommodations, right?
Exactly.
Like extra time on tests or maybe assistive technology.
Things like that. And, I used to think that accommodations were kind of like,
giving someone an unfair advantage?
Yeah, something like that. But this guide really, I don't know, it really shifted my perspective on that.
Me too. Because it's not about giving an advantage. It's about
creating a level playing field.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that, everyone learns differently.
And needs different tools to succeed.
Right. And this guide also talks a lot about the importance of flexibility in teaching and learning.
Oh, absolutely. Being adaptable is key.
Yeah. And I was wondering if you could, give me some examples of what that might look like in practice.
Sure. Like think about project-based learning.
Okay.
Where students can really, dive into a topic in a hands-on way.
Right.
Or peer teaching.
Where students are learning from each other.
Each other's strengths, exactly.
And that can be so powerful.
It can. And the guide also talks about, encouraging self-advocacy.
Which is such an important skill.
It is, because it's about students learning to, communicate their needs, ask for help when they need it.
Right. And it all kind of points to, the importance of collaboration.
Oh, for sure. Working together.
Yeah. And this guide also has some really great tips for conversations between parents and teachers.
Absolutely. Those conversations can be so crucial.
Yeah. And it all comes down to open communication, right?
Open and honest.
Yeah. And just simple phrases like, let's work together to find solutions, or, I'm here to support you in any way I can.
Yeah. Just those small things can go a long way in building trust.
Totally. And speaking of things that go a long way, let's talk about some of those common misconceptions out there.
The myths?
The myths, yeah. And this guide it's pretty straight up about busting those myths.
It doesn't shy away.
It doesn't, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Because, it reminds us that a learning disability is not a sign of laziness.
Or low intelligence.
Yeah. Some of the most brilliant minds throughout history have had learning differences.
Exactly.
And I know some people might push back on all this. They might say that focusing on individual strengths is like coddling students.
I've heard that.
How do we address that concern? What do we say to those people?
Well, I think it's important to point out that it's not about coddling. It's about recognizing and nurturing potential.
Yeah.
Every student, every single one, deserves the opportunity to learn and to succeed.
And sometimes that means providing, tailored support.
It does.
So towards the end of the guide, there are some incredibly empowering messages, I think, for students.
Those are powerful.
Like, you are capable of learning in your own way.
And focus on progress, not perfection.
Yeah. It's all about building self-belief.
Fostering a growth mindset.
Which is essential for anyone, really.
Absolutely, but especially for students who are facing learning challenges.
Right. So after this deep dive into this amazing guide, I feel like we've got a whole new toolkit for approaching conversations about learning disabilities.
New lens.
Yeah. With sensitivity and understanding. And, it's not about shying away from the topic, but it's about engaging with it in a way that's informed and compassionate.
You're now equipped to advocate for those inclusive environments.
Where everyone feels supported and empowered.
To learn and to thrive.
Right. And I think it's important to remember that learning more about how everyone learns, it benefits all of us.
It does. It opens our minds to, to different perspectives and possibilities, and ultimately makes the world a more welcoming and understanding place for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, there you have it.
That's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.